Everybody here. If you take a look at your programs for the very many that's in this room, we're going to start this time of open sharing. One thing Craig loved to do was give people opportunities to talk and share and give a story. So we are recommending that anybody who wants to share to please come up here and share their stories of their joy, sadness they had with Craig as well. And in the interest of time, we're going to try to limit it to anywhere from 2 to 3 minutes. But if you have something you want to share with everybody else, that's going to be streamed over there to Building 2. We encourage you to come up here to share. Thank you.
It's kind of cool. Like, no one else is here can see me, but like my voice is broadcasted all over. Nah. Well, when I was in high school, my father passed away, uh, and Uncle Craig took a surrogate father role for me. Uh, he was very supportive. He was, and I kind of like put him in that role, but he was more than happy to take that role for me, and in very many ways I pushed him away. I it was kind of tumultuous because I was a tumultuous person in that moment, but he was always very supportive in that time. It's been a while since I had talked to him, and I'm actually engaged now, and he was going to be the officiant at my wedding, but I got to talk to him the Saturday before and during winter break, so that was kind of nice. Um, so yeah, I'm gonna miss him a lot. Yeah. Uh, he always cracks his bad jokes, and he cracked his bad jokes with my fiance. He was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." Like he was like, "Oh, how did you meet Joseph?" "Oh, I'm so sorry," type of thing. So it's classic Uncle Craig. Yeah. So yeah, I'm gonna miss him. Thanks. I only have 30 seconds.
Hello, everybody. If you guys are done eating over there in Building 2, feel free to come back here to the sanctuary and we'll continue on our open mic sharing about Craig.
So if they can hear me over there, I can ask you to come over. All right, if you are eating and sharing food and conversation in the other room, we'd like to ask you to come over back to the sanctuary. We'd like to begin open sharing to give everyone a chance to share about Craig. Just like Pastor Brian said, how's the food that Pastor on and talking nobody listens to you. How many of you guys are here? How many from your church? How many people from your church? Okay.
Pastor, do you want to start right now?
Did you hear me over there?
Once you start talking, Pastor Brian's asking you to start
Oh,
now.
okay, because
and
I just gave a plea for people to come over. I didn't know if they heard it.
yeah,
Okay.
once you start right now,
Okay.
Pastor Brian, once you get behind the pulpit, he'll know to quiet down the room.
Okay.
So disregard if people are not coming in.
Okay, now are there others of you who have something to share about Craig? Yes? I know Asians never volunteer. Okay, so I'll start and then I'll wait for volunteers. Like I'll wait 5 seconds. If there's no volunteer, I'm going to call some of you up. All right, so I think what I'm going to miss most about not having Craig around is that, as I mentioned earlier, he and I shared a lot in youth ministry, and both of us would come up with, new or crazy ideas. And every time I got some new idea, I would give Craig a call and say, hey, can we have lunch? Can we meet at Starbucks? And I would come and share with him the idea. And then he would listen, and he would help me to examine it, and we would discuss it with each other. And then I would come back with version 2.0, and we would talk about it some more. But I always loved doing that with Craig because he was always in touch with what was going on in the churches. He was always in touch with what's going on in the culture. And it was just valuable time to be able to interact with him and to bounce ideas off of him. And that was one of the first things I thought of when I heard that he had passed away. Wow, I'm really going to miss those times. And, now I don't know who else to go to because, he was the one that I always called upon. And, it's going to be something I really miss. I was so glad to see Dr. Phil's photo put up when Pastor Brian was speaking from the men's breakfast because that was the last time I saw Craig. And we were at the men's breakfast at Rose's Cafe and Donut. And some of the guys mentioned how polite Craig was to go and ask if he could get free refills. And I was telling everybody else, I never ask. I just go get it. And, if they want to charge me, they can. But, I just go get it. So I was never polite. And but Craig, he beat me on politeness and etiquette. And he asked, and they said it was free, and he got his refill. But I'll never forget that men's breakfast because that's the last time I had a chance to see Craig and to talk with him. But he's going to be dearly missed. Okay, who's next? Oh, okay. Are you volunteering to share? No. Well, I said who's the volunteer? You said okay. All right, who's next? All right, so, well, Mark, you're here in the front row.
I remember when I first jumped on to Kairos, it was called Gavi back then. I was actually recruited to be a middle school counselor, but got pulled into going to the winter retreat. And this was back when we were headed up to Arnold. And it just so happened to be probably one of the worst winter storms we had in several decades. It was the kind of storm where it's pouring rain the entire way from Mountain View, past Fremont, past Tracy. And then once you started heading into the Arnold area, the rain stopped, looking like rain, just got thicker and thicker and thicker until you realize that we're in snow. And this is also before the time we had iPhones or Android phones. So GPS was purely determined by things we printed out on MapQuest way back when. Remember, I was driving in the car that Auntie Helen Hui, her MDX, it was not returned in the same condition it went up in the mountains with. But we went, so Craig and Nora always goes before the rest of us to set up the cabin, set up the food and all that stuff. And the cabin they chose had a driveway that was really steep, really steep. But by the grace of God, all the cars managed to get there, even though the last car got in closer to around 1:30-ish, around there. But I remember sitting in the cabin, we're waiting for all the cars to come, 11:30 rolls by, 12 rolls by, 12:30 rolls by. And I'm kind of looking at Craig like, so are we going to do anything right now? And he's like, oh, we'll just wait for the last car. So you keep waiting. 12:30 rolls around, 1 o'clock rolls around, so finally the last car came in. And I was like, okay, so what are you going to do now, Craig? And he's like, oh, we'll just take him to the other cabins. We'll just call it for a night. I'm like, wait, why did I just sit here for the last 2-3 hours doing absolutely nothing, waiting? And he was like, well, no, it's fine. Just take him back to, because we didn't have a cabin big for enough for all of us, so some of us had to go to a different cabin. And we go out to the car, and lo and behold, Auntie Helen's MDX had slid down the hill, turned 90 degrees, and I think it hit Patty and Sek Ang's van, which is right behind it. And we're like, oh, okay, now we have to get car insurance involved with this. So not the most auspicious start to the winter retreat, and it was by far the worst driving conditions we ever had. But I just remember throughout the entire time, you couldn't dampen Craig's joyfulness and his cheerfulness. Like, he was just upbeat the entire time. It's like, it's going to be a great weekend. And like, we're out there trying to put like the old school chains, not the cable chains, like the old school chains. We're like, yeah, it's going to be great. I believe you. And But, at the end of the day, it's funny because one of the other stories behind that is Dan Pojo was a counselor with me at this time, and we were at the other cabin, and they had just done the snow plow, and there's this huge mound of snow in the driveway. So I'm looking at Dan, I'm like, what do I do? He's like, just go back up the hill, pick up some momentum, and, just go straight into the driveway. I'm like, all right, he's a cop. Like, they teaching these things at police academy, right? Should be no problem. So I do it. We go there, and I turn the wheel, go in the driveway, and the car kept going this way. All right? And I remember sitting there, and I looked at Dan with this face of betrayal, like, you've lied to me. All right? Luckily, the car wasn't damaged too much, Auntie Helen, I promise. But going back to, that winter retreat, I remember that was the one where we really bonded. And despite all the, Mother Nature going against us, all the car issues that we had, all the change that I had to put on, at the end of the day, it was worth it. And a cool, funny note about that story I say is because one of the one of the students in the car I had to go like, hey, get out of the car, push the car out of the snowbank that I just ran into, is now our deacon, Sam Wong. All right? And this is the legacy that Craig has. The youth the program that he brought up, like we see all these people that return back, it can't help but be encouraging. And that's something I remember Craig most about is just, doesn't matter what the weather throws at us, what circumstances throw at us, like we can always rely on Craig to just be positive, happy, and just totally upbeat. And it shows. You see everybody here, So anyone who would like to take the mic next, feel free.
Okay, I'm Dr. Phil. It's a really hard act to follow dinner, but since all of you are shy, so, the way I think about Craig's death is that I feel really fortunate that he's up there in heaven because in a selfish way, I know that he's interceding on our behalf. If there's anyone who's a consummate insider Christian, it would be Craig, And I feel good about that because I often don't pray enough for myself. And Craig knows so many people, and he's interested in, what's going on in their life, that even if you're not praying for yourself, or maybe you don't know what to pray for yourself, or maybe, you don't pray regularly, now that Craig is up there, not only is he enjoying good food, but I know that he's probably nagging on our behalf for our prayers to be answered, because if there's anyone who's a better ambassador, it would be Craig. So that's why, in a way, I'm not too sad because I know I'm going to join him one day, and I think those of us who really believe in heaven, we know that we'll see him again one day, okay? So I'd like to change the tone of my message now because I would like to make Nora laugh, okay? And I got her permission to share this. So, as you know, I'm not only Craig's friend and co-worker, I'm also his doctor, okay? So my wife is here. But that's all right. I'm already up here, so she can't stop me. So, Craig and I, we like to joke around a lot. That's what I'm going to miss about him, because I could just be myself. I don't have to pretend to be a goody-goody person. He's never judgmental. So we joked around a lot, and we talk about how doctors tend to have really bad bedside manners, right? And Craig has a lot of experience, medically speaking, because, back about 27 years ago, he started having serious heart problems and needed really major heart surgery. But before it got to that point, he didn't know why he was feeling so ill. So he was telling me the story about how before the heart surgeons would be willing to do surgery, they wanted to map out his chest and his heart so that they can plan out how they were going to do heart surgery on him. So he went and got an MRI. You know, he stripped down to almost being naked, except for maybe his boxer shorts. And while he was sitting on the MRI table on just maybe a hand towel with nothing between him and the technician, but a hospital gown, the technician says, "Excuse me, I'm going to have to call the doctor in before we conclude because, you know, I see something," and she was worried about it. So this being Stanford, you know, you don't get the attending. You get a handsome, young, promising resident. The resident comes in and looks at the MRI of his heart, and he couldn't believe what he saw. And without even looking at Craig, I think he said to Craig, "Do you have syphilis?" And when Craig tells the story, he would say, "Excuse me? What did you just say?" and you know, he has this characteristic laugh where it sounds like he's trying to catch his breath, where he's like panting, and he's at a loss for words, but really he couldn't get his words out. So I think we should all feel blessed by God's grace because, you know, Craig lived another 27, 28 years. And, you know, I think we're really lucky because he was pretty young that time when he had the heart surgery. I mean, it's hard for me to describe how serious the heart surgery was. There aren't that many places that can do that kind of heart surgery. You know, only places like Mayo Clinic, Cleveland Clinic. But lucky for him, he lived so close to Stanford, he was able to get surgery. But, you know, the heart doctors knew that, you know, it wouldn't be good for him to get a redo surgery. And they were worried whether the heart valve that he had would last for many more decades because he was so young. So, I don't know, I'm almost done, but since no one seems to be eager to come up, I'll just tell you I'm fascinated by their choice that they chose a really special heart valve for Craig. And that's why he often would say people complain that his heart was so noisy, you know. I don't know if he had trouble falling asleep at night, you know, but he had this heart valve called Starr-Edwards aortic valve. And you know it's a special valve when they name it after the people who invented it, you know. Starr was the physician, Edwards was an electrical engineer, and they designed this heart valve that was a bore and cage kind of a heart valve, completely unnatural. It didn't work anything like the way God designed a heart valve, and I think it was probably designed and patented probably in 1960. But when he had the surgery 30 years later, there were many other heart valves that, you know, were patented and, you know, the in thing, but they chose that because that heart valve design had a proven record. You know, to this day, there are people who have the heart valve has lasted 4 or 5 decades, and they didn't want Craig to have another surgery when he was only 55 or 65 because the next heart surgery would be even harder on Craig. So, yeah, so he has a very special heart valve, and I think figuratively and literally, he had a really special heart. Yeah. Okay, any other volunteers? Okay.
Wow, this is like, I never thought I'd be here, like, frankly. And also just so, I find it so comical the one time I come back in like 2 years, everyone's still sitting as far away as humanly possible from the podium, just like not draw attention to yourself. It's like I live in Texas now, so like very non-Chinese, and this is like a very Chinese thing to do, is just like sit really far back for whatever reason. I honestly didn't like, ever think this whole time would ever come before like I had kids. I always envisioned like seeing, oh nice, see, great work kids, yes, nice. Set the example. Because I always thought when I was going to get married and eventually have kids or do whatever, Uncle Craig would be there at my wedding, and do the thing. I think a lot of us in the younger generations, and it's amazing to see like how he's done that for everyone older than us. But for my year in particular, definitely thought, I don't know, we'd have like a lifelong relationship for sure. For those of you who do know me, know me well, I don't have a great relationship with my biological dad. He and I have butt heads throughout my 22 and a half years of life, more often than not. So having a relationship with a father figure was very foreign to me. I never understood like having a role model, and when my friends at school would say like, oh, I'm like best friends with my dad, like I mentally could not even comprehend what that would look like to like enjoy being in the presence of my father. And then when I moved here when I was 16, I literally Googled like Asian church in Palo Alto, and Lord's Grace popped up as the first hit. So I was like, all right, this seems like cool enough. It's like seems relatively close to where I live, so might as well just jump in and see how it goes. And I remember walking through those doors and meeting Kevin, Mo first, and then subsequently meeting Uncle Craig, who like welcomed me as if I'd been there for like my entire life. And that was like a start of a bond that is difficult to put into words and how much he meant to me. Just because I remember Kevin would, and Adam and Naomi and Jimmy would say like, oh, you haven't like been to camp yet. Like you don't know how emotional that first day or that week is for us as kids. And I was like, oh man, like I've done like the Christian camp thing. Like what more can I really get from this experience? Blah, blah, blah. But that night, ironically, Pastor Vic was talking about like fatherhood and like being a son in God's family. And I remember like just sitting there and just like, Adam can attest, he was like sitting like a foot next to me. I was just like bawling my eyes out, just like, what is happening? I've never been so emotional in my entire life. And like, I remember like Uncle Craig like walking past and it's like seeing me just like in a puddle, literally, and just like putting his hand on my shoulder the way that only he does, like, and just like, gosh, like that drastically changed like the course of my life. And just having someone who, when they asked you like how are you doing, even like something as simple as like a Facebook post, but like genuinely asking like how are you doing, I don't like get emotional very often, so this is like a new for me. It just like I couldn't even put into words like the value he has had on my life and like my walk with God, and like just like knowing, I don't know, if any of you have like I highly doubt this is like the demographic to speak to about this, but like the idea of boxing, combat sports is not super common amongst a lot of Asian people, particularly Chinese, but the notion of having like someone in your corner, and just being able to like they're not fighting your fight for you, thank you. They're not in the ring with you when you're like throwing down with the person across the ring, but like when that period and that round is over, they're going to be back and giving you advice and like supporting you, and like if you have cuts on your face, like you'll have to like patch it up, and like, and I couldn't think of a better person to have in your corner than Uncle Craig. Someone who would never judge or never think of you as lesser than anyone else. And he's been like around like a bunch of amazing people, and never like felt that I couldn't talk to him, or being like in Michigan, like super far away, he would like make the effort to call and see how I was doing. And yeah, just like I it's hard to vocalize and use like mouth noises to explain him as a man and as a leader and a mentor, and just like, you know, a second dad for me and like so many others in my generation, and generations like before me. And it really does hurt to know that like there are going to be kids who go through this church and not know him and like not know how great he was. And not to like dampen the mood or anything, because like he's awesome and just like let's like yeah celebrate, woo. But in all seriousness, like to the Ng family, like you guys don't know, and maybe you do know, but like for me, even like when Adam and I like went over to like have a sleepover and played board games until like 2:30 in the morning, and then the next morning, I had no idea, like I'd never had cereal before up until that point, or like oatmeal before that part of my life. No clue what this tasted like. And he was like, "Oh, dude, like I need to make you like my world famous hot cereal." And I was like, "What? What does that even mean, hot cereal?" And then he made like oatmeal and just like blew my mind. But that's like what he did, right? He'd go above and beyond and like just never let you settle for less. Yeah, I don't know. Like, wasn't really sure if there's like really a point to sharing that, but figured, you know, that's the thing. But I guess like last point for me is just like the notion of a legacy, and that he entrusted us, all of us, to live on his legacy and to love as he loved, not with reckless abandon, and not focus on like, particularly because we're in a church, and a Chinese church at that, like it's not about like the dogma or the conservatism or like how you dress, how you look, but it's how you love people. And I think he exemplified that mission of Christ more than anything. Like we can focus on all the BS rules that, you know, Chinese people like to focus on, like how you dress or like how you cut your hair, you don't have tattoos, whatever. Uncle Craig never cared about any of that. He cared about like, how can I love you well, and how can I make you love other people well? So do the thing.
Okay. Hello. I'm Jonathan. I am a first-year student at UC Davis. I went through Kairos from my 7th grade year to my 12th grade year. Things that I wanted to share is that Uncle Craig's passing has been a huge loss to all of us. And I've been feeling the effects really lately. I think one of the fondest memories I remember having with Uncle Craig was the time that we met at youth group, because the story goes, as a middle schooler, I was struggling with social anxiety. I was getting bullied both at my church before LGCC, before I came to LGCC. I was being bullied at school, and it was just a very emotionally taxing time. And the first time I came to youth group, I shared about my struggles in the prayer circle, and I was crying and really hard. And Uncle Craig said, "You know what, everyone in the prayer circle, let's just go up and hug Jonathan." So like they put me in the middle, and the whole group gave me a hug. And for the first time, I think I understood what it was like to be loved by a all-loving God. Sorry. Because honestly, like Uncle Craig loved me when no one else did. So, like, it just showed me how possible it was for there to be an all-loving God that loved me, even in my hardest times. something else I wanted to share is that Uncle Craig, he had this sermon once on a Sunday where he was talking about how there's a pattern in the Bible where the people that disobey God's commands end up being irrelevant in the narrative of the Bible. But from the moment that we met, Uncle Craig really included me into the kingdom of God, and it was so powerful. And since that time, he's like spent a lot of late nights and retreats and Kairos Friday nights with me, and he has been trying to like grow my faith and relationship in Christ. And now that he's gone, I do want to remember not only the legacy that he has left, but also all the times that he has been trying to help me grow my faith and see inspiration in the Bible that like could apply to like how I can live a Christ-like faith. I want to make that my own now, and now that he's gone, that's become even more evident. So, thank you guys.
I just want to share a few things because we have to catch the train. And I, as a parent, I came to LGCC when my son was in 6th grade, and I see that Craig here has spent numerous time at night. A lot of time I wait until like midnight, and he is like counseling students, and Jonathan is one of them. And I think one time it really struck me is like I asked Jonathan. He changed his. He's very calm after he interact with Craig and pray with Craig. So I always wonder, what's the secret? What's the secret recipe? One time I asked Jonathan, what did he pray with you about? And he said, Mom, he prayed with me, but sometimes he use language is like Greek that he doesn't understand. So I know that he is using speaking tongue to pray. And I began to realize the power of prayer. And it struck with me that I don't have a wisdom, to help my son out when he's depressed. And I find that prayer and the Holy Spirit and God. So it really opened up my eye to see the only way is through prayer. And I thank God. And also I met a friend at church, and we had moms in prayer, and we will continue to pray. And Craig, I want to let you know we'll continue to pray. And a lot of time I always see the kid at the end, they make their prayer circle, like, spend the time in prayer. It's just a beautiful sight. We want our church to continue to pray, even though he's gone. God is watching over us. Thank you. We have to catch the train.
Just a quick logistics note is we're going to try to have a hard stop around 7. So if you guys have something you want to share, now's the time to think about it. And we'll try to, guidance-wise, maybe anywhere from 2 to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Hello. My main interaction with Craig was through my daughter, who went through a youth group here for 6 years. And I will always remember Nora and Craig cooking big dinners for us at the winter retreat. Thank you very much. And one thing I want to share is that one time I attended a grad night, and I saw a young man whom I had not interacted for a few years. And I noticed that he was an MC at the grad night, and how presentable and eloquent and confident he was. So I wrote an email that evening to the mother of that young man. I said, I am very proud of your son. I mean, I hadn't interacted with him for a few years, and he turned out to be such a confident and eloquent young man. And the mother emailed me back and said, yes, Craig had worked with him very hard on this grad night for many, many times, many days. And that's Craig. He always quietly and working back in the scene to work with young people. And I'm forever grateful to him. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Brian Chung, and I was blessed to be in youth group with Uncle Craig and Auntie Nora and Christelle from about 1997 to 2003. And at the time, my family, we had been to church a little bit before, but we did not have a relationship with Jesus, and my parents didn't go to church. And I just remember coming to youth group, and just as many people shared Uncle Craig's warm energy and his distinct voice. Like, I had never heard a voice like that before, and he would. I just remember youth group being so fun. I was like, wow, and interacting with Uncle Craig and Christelle and Matthew and the youth, and hearing so much about how much they love Jesus. And so I continued to go to youth group, and I was amazed at how involved Uncle Craig and the youth leaders were in our lives. Uncle Craig would call me occasionally, and I would always know when my parents picked up the phone, like I could recognize his voice. And one of the some of the standout things were the excitement and the passion that Uncle Craig and the youth group community. I remember Auntie Jean, Auntie Sharon, displayed for Jesus. I appreciate that David shared. It was like something that I caught, or something. There was something that in Jesus, this passion that they had. And I remember going to BAYF. I remember seeing Pastor Victor. I was in 7th grade. I think it was 1998. And for growing up, I had some conflict and tension with my parents and some relatives. And it was something that was really bothering me. And I told Uncle Craig. Uncle Craig prayed for me, and I was a 7th grader. Uncle Craig encouraged me at that moment when we're at camp. Why don't you call your parents right now and talk to them? And it was just that was something that I had never would have thought of, imagined it at that time. And Uncle Craig just he sat with me as I called my parents and explained to them about the hope that I'm learning about in Jesus and how I hope to have reconciliation with them. And after that time in camp, I went home, interacted with my parents, and it was like a miracle. The level of interaction that I had with my parents and my relatives was different than I had ever experienced before. And that was just even thinking about at that time, Uncle Craig and had such a encouragement in it for me. And I'm amazed by, as many people shared, how active Uncle Craig was able to be involved in so many of our lives. And I continued to be involved in youth group. And then when I was at BAYF, after I graduated, I had the privilege to serve as a counselor for a few years. And I always loved those. Uncle Craig would call us out to do one-on-ones. And whenever I had a chance to have a one-on-one with Uncle Craig, it was like a privilege. And similarly, he prayed over. There was a time when he prayed for me, and he prayed some encouragements that he saw that God would be doing in my life and how God would be using me. And somehow those stuck with me for past 10, 15 years. And I still remember the prayer, the words that he shared to me. So I praise God for that. And really thankful for Auntie Nora and Christelle, Matthew, David, Zoe, and your family for just as much as Uncle Craig has blessed us, just hearing and knowing how much of a joy and delight that he was you are to him. I believe and see how much you have impacted him. And so him giving to us in the youth group is also the Lord working through you and working through your family. So thank you for your care for us, and you're like sharing of Uncle Craig with us. And I have an older brother, Matthew Chung, who is also in the youth group. He wasn't able to be here today, but he wrote some stuff that he wanted me to share for my brother. So, dear Ing family, I, Matt, and my family regret we cannot be here today and honor and remember Uncle Craig's life. When we found out that Uncle Craig passed away, we were very sad. We were in the middle of a day at a conference about 7,000 miles away from California. I just had to reflect on the rest of the day and pray. That day it was sunny and clear skies. This made it not as painful because I was reminded that Uncle Craig is in a better place. I always remember care he had for each individual he had maintained with each individual he had met, whether it was short or long. No matter how many times I have not been in touch with him, being in college and now overseas, every time he would see my family, he would always give me a big, genuine hug, a pat on the shoulder, and ask how we are. One memory of Uncle Craig I remember is he sat me down with other seniors when I was at the BAYF camp, and he expressed the importance of community and being involved with other Christians during our time in college. This is something I will always remember. Growing up in a non-Christian family, Uncle Craig at times was a father figure while I was in youth group at LGCC. The message that he shared was something that was crucial in my spiritual journey with the Lord during the time. No words can fathom the loss that Auntie Nora and the whole family feel right now. We do pray for you guys. Auntie Nora and the Ing family, I want to encourage you by evidence and the people here to honor your husband that he was a faithful servant. Well done, good and faithful servant. We love you guys and pray this time the Lord will fill your grieving hearts and people here will come alongside you in this time. Love, Matthew, Yuhui, Abigail, and Tabitha.
My name is Brian Suey. I went to youth group around the same time that Brian just went up, 1999 to 2003. So I'm 34 right now. And I was really sad when I found out Craig passed. And I felt that very deeply. Just wanted to share 3 stories that helped me remember Craig. By the way, when everyone was posting on Facebook with all the stories, I couldn't bring myself to it. And I'm glad that I have this venue to share what Craig meant to me and how he's impacted my life. The first was, it's a funny one. We were at BAYF camp, and he was having a one-on-one with me, and there was this, it was like a yellow jacket or a bee, and was flying around, and was really annoying Craig, and he said, as he was swatting, "In the name of Jesus, be gone," and he swatted it into my lip. And you know, like when you're in 8th grade, like you care about what people think about you. That's really important to you. And I had this fat lip because Craig had done that. But what I loved about it was Craig, like that man lived his theology. He really believed that as a child of God, he could command the command nature. And I thought that was really neat. But I did have a fat lip. And so that was a funny memory that Craig gave me. Second and important one, Craig would often say, would often challenge his group that perhaps maybe someone in the group would be called to be a minister or in full-time ministry. And whenever he would say that, I knew that God was using him to speak through me. I am a pastor today, but in, I think, 8th grade, 7th or 8th grade, he encouraged me to share my faith with someone, and I did, and it was really bad. Like really bad. It just did not go well. It was not sort of the picturesque moment. And I told Craig about it, and you can imagine a fragile teenager or preteen that this was sort of a make or break moment. You know, you kind of think, I'm never going to share again. And Craig encouraged me. All he said, it was pretty simple, but he was like, Brian, next time you share your faith, just read it. Just read the track. And it was so easy and so practical. But that really transformed my life and has impacted my ministry today. It might surprise you that there are many pastors that are not good at evangelism because you can teach the Bible and you can teach it very thoroughly and just not encounter very many non-Christians. That just, I don't know, it happens. But that moment in 7th or 8th grade gave me, set me up to think about evangelism throughout my life and in my ministry. The next time that I would share my faith, remembering how bad it went, it was just that encouragement to keep going was so valuable. And this doesn't always happen, but the next time that I got to share the gospel, someone did come to know the Lord. And so I wanted to honor Craig, that his life legacy, the thing, he cared so much about all of us, and he did it with hugs and pats on the back, but he always knew that what human beings really needed was a relationship with Jesus. And so for him to give that to me, to be patient, to be encouraging, has really shaped my ministry today as I work with college students. Thirdly, I want to, when I heard that Craig had passed, I felt bad because, you know, when you're with Craig in youth group, you have a lot of time with him, but after you graduate, it's a lot less. And it's not a feeling of guilt, it's just regret that, I think my last conversation with Craig was just not very, I mean, it was very matter of fact, it wasn't very special, and I felt bad about it. I wish I had a more meaningful conversation, but I thought about and I reflected on the work that he did as a youth minister, as a mentor. He knew that he had a small window, and he poured himself into that window, knowing that it would be temporary. And I'm really touched by that because he wouldn't always get to see the impact. I mean, he would sometimes get to see it, but past that youth group time, he wouldn't always get to see it or be so close to it. And I know that many of us left youth group and went to college, and sometimes would have a fantastic college ministry experience, and I don't know if it'd be like fight with Craig, or I think we'd sometimes unintentionally make him feel bad, like, oh, I didn't get the meat and potatoes later, or I got it here, but I didn't get it, or something like that. But as I think about Craig knowing that he had this small window, I think about what it says about John the Baptist. All of John's disciples were coming to John the Baptist saying, this Jesus is coming, he's taking away all our disciples. And John the Baptist said, I must decrease and he must increase. And I think about that with Craig, that Craig, his life legacy, what he really wanted was to show people Jesus, to bring people to their Savior so that they could know him. And so I'm going to miss him. Ings, thanks for sharing Craig with us. And thanks for giving me the opportunity to share about a man I love so much.
Craig's passing was a shock to me because just a week before, we were still having staff meeting. We were talking about very important things. So he's always a big part in a very important part of our staff. And every Tuesday we have staff meeting. So it was very shocking. And when I think we heard that he was not doing well, so we start praying at the staff meeting and things like that. So it's a big loss to all of us, and there are many things I remember Craig very fondly. One of the things is his creativity. You probably know, right? In our pastoral staff team, we have a few who is very creative. Craig definitely is one of them. And I remember working with him a few times on the Good Friday service. And he made that cross with all the candles. He put so much work into it. It was beautiful. I have worked with him probably 2 or 3 times on the Good Friday. Every time, basically, I was just following his ideas because he's so creative and he has all these great things. Every time he says, "Oh, why don't we do this? Why don't we do that?" And it's all great, and everybody enjoy it. So I'm going to miss that part of him because I will not be able to turn to him for help. And he's also very fond of acting, and whenever we have staff performance at the Thanksgiving dinner, he's so alive, and he's a big part of the cast, and so we are very thankful. I'm very thankful. So those are the good memories I will remember for a long, long time. He's a big part of it. The other thing is it was a long time ago. We were talking about, Patrick, I think you have a lot of gifts of wisdom. So I said, "Oh, nobody told me that. At least my wife won't say that." And actually, this is what I think of Craig. Actually, he has the gift of wisdom. He's an artist. He's like, not analytical. He's very spontaneous, very, different. So I was an engineer, so I'm very analytical. So I think of wisdom in a way, solving problem, very systematic, very, kind of check out all the things. But as I work with him, I think he has a lot of godly wisdom in his perception of things, his viewpoints, and he's actually very knowledgeable about a lot of things. Sometimes really surprise me and say, "Oh, this guy knows a lot." And I always admire people who knows a lot, from my background, and I really like people who knows a lot. So I enjoy talking with him. And as you know, youth ministry is not a walk in the park, as a counselor, right? It's not simple. You have good kids, you have naughty kids, no bad kids, all good kids, right? But very difficult. So among the staff, we sometimes talk about people, right? Pastor Brian also mentioned, right? We talk about some of the people sitting over here, throughout the years. Some are very difficult from what I know. And I just see how Craig will come up with solutions, how to work with more kids with more special needs in different ways. And of course, working with parents. We have many, many good parents in our church, but they are demanding. They expect a lot, They expect a lot from the youth ministry, I don't know anything about, growing up in America because I was born overseas, so I'm going to send them to Craig, and then you teach them everything about America, how to grow well in America. So I am an OBC, so I don't know anything. So you have to do it. But then, youth ministry only have how many hours per week, of the young people, right? Not that many. So actually, nobody can replace the parents at home, to raise up their kids. But they are, Craig basically got thrown at, come on, fix my kids, that's it. Otherwise, I won't come to this church, that kind of thing, right? And he has to deal with a lot of this case, with wisdom, with patience, with love, and I just sometimes observe, right, how he handled this, including my own 2 kids growing up, and Pauline is also like one of those moms who really care about what's going to happen to my kids, right? Are you going to help them or whatever, right? So I can see these are good intention, but it's very hard to handle. But I think God gave him a lot of wisdom. And of course, I don't admire his role to lead the youth ministry because the helpers, the counselors, change a lot. Every school year, I guess you kind of going through that, right? Every year, people come in, people go out. And I don't like that kind of, always changing team, right? But he has to deal with it. In a way, youth ministry is about changes. Every year you have some new youth coming in, there are people graduating, and I say, oh, I'm going to miss all those who are going, and this is a new group I have to learn again. But he does it so well. He does it so well. I think he's full of love. He's willing to handle all this. And I sometimes say, do you miss all those people you train and you send them to college? And amazingly, I think he kept up with many of them, right? And I just say, all this relationship he built, and he has wisdom to learn how to make everyone special. The other thing is I admire his love and big heart. I get people know his kindness. He's actually very kind. Among the staff, sometimes we have to deal with tough situations. So I am very matter of fact. I'm very, there are rules, there are guidelines and things like that. He will always push me and say, what about caring for this person? I said, oh yeah, by the way, yeah, I think I need to care about person other than the rules, right? So he's always the one to kind of help me to be mindful of people's needs and things like that. So I think he has a big heart. I sometimes look at him as the big pillow everybody can go to and find this big hug. Another thing is his willingness to serve. I have my own stereotype about artists. I think they are not as like engineers, so getting things done, solving problems and things like that. But he is an exception. He is so handy in so many things. I'm surprised how well he cooks, how well he do all these projects and things like that, how well he's able to solve problems when the kids come to him and say, Uncle Craig, I have this thing, and they say, oh, and he fix. So it looks like he does a lot of things, which is not my impression of an artist. I think artists just draw art, do this kind of thing, So not exactly. He broke all my stereotypes on artists. And but he's very willing to serve. He's willing to. And when I worked with him on the Good Friday service, he did most of the work. I said, what about me? Oh, I can take care of that. I can take of decoration. I can take care of that. I will find people. So I was amazed. The other thing is just his faithfulness. I know this church quite well. So from these last 30 years of youth ministry, hasn't been that easy. Actually, a lot of times the church did not give the youth ministry enough support, financially, leadership, or just helpers. We don't even pray for them. We don't know what's going on until the last, 10, 15 years. We are more aware of how we can pray for the youth group. But he hang in there with or without enough help. He just continued. You can see his heart, his calling to youth ministry is amazing. It's amazing. And by God's grace, I can see God sending the right kind of partners, like Jenny, Helen, Sharon, and many others to help him, and Kathy Kyle and other people who actually turn out to be good compliments. Craig is not organized, but all these ladies are very organized. Get people lined up, do things, right? And so actually perfect solution that somehow happened. But it wasn't easy, right? Every year is a new situation, and he just deal with it as it comes with a lot of faith and hope and joy. That's the part I'm very thankful. Lastly, I just want to at least look back this last 1.5 years. I am thankful that Craig was able to go home more to Hawaii because the mom's health is not as good. And of course, youth ministry has to go on. But amazingly, God sent Nikki here, right? And to help him out. And I think to that, there's no regret. He spent a lot of good time with his mom. And I'm very thankful. So I know God knows what he's doing, even though we really miss Craig. And I'm thankful for him. I will miss him a lot.
So in the interest of time, we have maybe time for one, maybe two more. If we have anyone who would like to share, now's the time. As you feel led. Oh.
everyone. I'm Amanda Lee. If you don't know me, I've grown up my entire life with Craig. David is in my year at school growing up. So our family was in the Hosanna cell group with Craig, and we live, a 5-minute drive from their house. So we were over there quite a lot growing up, and it was a privilege being able to be with him all those years. And my dad's not able to be here, and he's been taking it really hard not having Craig around. I know that my dad in particular misses Craig a lot, because there are things that he shared with Craig that he never shared with anybody else, and even stuff that I didn't know about until relatively recently about my dad's family. So, and with my mom is she teaches art history at De Anza, so they had that connection. They'd talk about art and stuff like that. Obviously, my siblings and I went through youth group with Craig, so it's been amazing not only to see how Craig has been a mentor in my life, but also how he has shaped my siblings as they've grown up. And for me, I don't know how many artists are in this church, but it doesn't seem like there's that many of us, or at least we're not very loud about it. So I'm probably one of the louder I'm an artist types in this church. And Craig was the one who, he was my mentor in spiritual art, and he's the one who taught me how to use my talents for God. So also, if you don't know me, I am one of the church admins, and a lot of what I do is the graphic design and the posters and flyers and things like that. And then on the other side of things, I go to Comic Cons and anime conventions, and I sell that kind of stuff. So I've got two sides of the gamut, and a lot of what I've been learning in the past couple years has been, how do I meld that and reach out to people through my art, through that medium. So that's a lot of what I'm learning through now, and a lot of what Craig has influenced. So yeah, he's definitely had a huge legacy, and I've also watched him encourage other people through some of the same things that I did. So yeah, thanks guys.
I don't know if I'm the last person to share, and I hope not, but this is what I get for procrastinating and coming up here. But I wanted to say, thanks for all this sharing. It's so awesome to hear the stories that and the impact that Uncle Craig has had on everybody's lives here, and not just in this room, but beyond. And I think one of my first memories of Uncle Craig was when I was just, that was back in 2014, when I was just checking out Kairos and checking out this church, because I wasn't even a member here yet. But Uncle Craig made a really good impression on me, because he was super friendly and super warm and welcoming. And there's a couple of things that really touched me, like how he really loved Auntie Nora. A little bit emotional, but when Uncle Craig passed away, Auntie Nora, I think Jessie Louis was telling me, she was telling me how Auntie Nora accidentally posted messages to Uncle Craig, or about Uncle Craig, and how she missed holding Uncle Craig's hands, and that got to me. So then I thought, okay, how you know one of the tricky things about sharing about somebody is it's unfortunate that we share memories about people after they pass away. So I wanted to share something about Auntie Nora. Not that she's dying anytime soon, but I wanted to share something about Auntie Nora and how she feels loved besides just having Uncle Craig love her. And so I messaged Auntie Nora after Uncle Craig passed away, and then I wrote to her, "Hi Auntie Nora, may I ask what your top love languages are?" And so if you don't know what love languages are, there's words of affirmation, there's physical touch, means hugging or kissing your spouse or your children, gifts, acts of service, what's the last one? Quality time, yeah. So I asked Auntie Nora this, and so I wanted to encourage everybody here, like Auntie Nora's here, and I want everybody to show her, the love that, in a way that she feels the most amount of love. And so she wrote back, what are the choices? Different authors have different words. That's very profound. And so I replied, words of affirmation. Oh, I should have read this. Words of affirmation, hugs, physical touch, receiving gifts, quality time, and acts of service. People many times have more than one. So she wrote back and said, I don't know, I'm just me. Actually, I didn't ask if I could share this. I'm so sorry. But anyway, it's okay. There's nothing. So sorry. I found a quiz, she said, that I could take. I found Focus on the Family article. I don't know if you found that yet or had time to take it, but she also wrote back, quality time and acts of service. With Craig, add hugs and holding hands. I'm not Gabby, but I do compliment when I know it's important. That's my guess. I'll take the test later. And then I wrote, I'm not too sure what Gabby means, but I love knowing this about you, Auntie Nora. Only if you feel like taking the rest of the test and sharing, I would love to know what you get as the results. And then she wrote back and she taught me something. She said, by Gabby, I mean loquacious. And then I'm like, what does loquacious mean? She teaches me everything, like something every time. And she says, I am cautious with words because words can be destructive, very wise. I can accidentally hurt people if I don't filter, like me. However, I know that too few words make people uncomfortable or cause misunderstanding. It's a target, balance, or a moving target. And so those are really just really wise responses, and I really appreciate Auntie Nora for that. And then I wrote back, yes, that is really insightful, and I learned a new word, loquacious. And then she wrote, ha ha ha, think of Uncle Craig as an example. So I wrote back, ha ha, how funny, I find that very endearing, and that's kind of where our conversation paused. But Auntie Nora, we love you, and we we'll try to love you as best as we can, especially through acts of service and the other thing that you mentioned, which was quality time. And so also, you can never be too Gabby or too loquacious, and you can never be too harsh, because we know that you are just as loving as Uncle Craig is. So thank you so much for allowing me to share up here right now.
We're at the 11th hour, literally. Is there anybody else who wanted one last sharing? My man.
Hi, my name's Adam Lee. Pastor Phil, who did the closing prayer for us, and he's my dad. And we, as you know, we've been friends with the Ings for a very long time. I'm not exactly sure what I wanted to say up here, but recollecting my thoughts. In high school, there was a night, a really bad night when I attempted to end my own life. And it's crazy, but the day after or 2 days after or something, the entire Ng family just kind of dropped everything and took me out to dinner. We sang in worship and they prayed over me and thank you. They gave me a lot of things that I've held on to this very day. And I think the biggest thing that Uncle Craig ever taught me was to love myself and to accept myself as God sees me. Did not mean to go there, but he was so proud of who I was, no matter how many times I messed up, or how many times I did something stupid, or got angry or lost my cool, and I'll always be grateful for that. I don't really have a grand lesson or anything, but I just wanted to share that he made me into who I am today, just as he's done a lot for everyone else. So just thank you, and thank you everyone for sharing, and he'll be missed.
Well, with that, we want to end this time of sharing. Thank you, everybody who did share. It's really cool to see just how much impact Craig has had in everybody's life. I want to close this out in the time of prayer, but praying on the pulpit doesn't seem quite right. Who's not a pastor? So, Pastor Vic, if you want to close us out again, this will be great.
Is Pastor David here? No, he's not here. Okay, he says
you get to close again.
I made a faux pas at the end of the previous gathering. He was supposed to give the blessing for the food, and I completely forgot about it, and I did it instead, so I was trying to make it up to him here. But yeah, oh well. Okay. Why don't we all stand together? Yeah, Lord, once again, we want to give thanks to you that you formed and made Craig the way that he was, and that he was a person that we could all love and cherish, be blessed by. And we miss him now. We're going to miss him in the days ahead. And we pray your blessing upon Nora and the family, and as they continue to remember Craig, that you would bring your blessing upon them. And take us from here tonight now, and that we have great memories of everything that Craig meant to us, and we would know that you are here, and you mourn with us, and you weep with us, and you rejoice with us in the knowing the type of person our brother was. And so bless us with that as we go from here tonight. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. Good night.
Hello. If anyone's able to help stick around and stay and grab some food to go home, I think there should be a good amount of food that's left. So please take some food home. And also, if you're able to help stick around and put some chairs away, we need volunteers to put some chairs back to original sanctuary condition, and building 2. Where the food was, we'll also need to put that room back into original placement. So we would appreciate any of the help to clean up. Thank you so much.